Hi, I'm Patrick Gibbs, film critic for SLUG magazine and host of the Popcorn Podcast. Thanks for joining me today for another episode focused on the best show on television, The Pitt. Last time I spoke with cast members about the themes of mental health and empathy, and this time I'm going to be speaking with Noah Wiley, Fiona Dora, Ernest Harden Jr., Brandon Mendez Homer, and a variety of cast members, as well as some behind the scenes creatives about the themes of death and saying goodbye in the pit.
I had an opportunity because it was the first script I wrote to really sort of zero in on end of life ritual and end of life care and how we're going to be caring for uh, our parents' generation, which is a very large generation that is all going to be requiring care in the next 5 to 10 years, if not sooner. And it's an important conversation to start. So I was really excited to have that play out in a little bit more of a naked and raw way than I think we've ever seen it depicted before. Madison Mason, who plays the older guy, and Mackenzie and Rebecca, who plays the daughter, they were all phenomenal. Everybody that's come in has just joined the ensemble and hit the ground running. Top-notch performers, all of them.
When I first read it, my initial take on it was what a beautiful opportunity for television, for storytelling, to provide people with catharsis, to be able to watch a universal experience and to watch it be handled in a way that speaks to what some people think is the right way to handle it, or the best way to handle it, or a safe way to handle it, or a compassionate way to handle it. I was not unaware of the word ho'oponopono, which is introduced by Noah Wiley's character.
It's basically just a few key things that we can say when we're saying goodbye to a loved one that can really help at the early stages of loss.
What are they?
I love you. Thank you. I forgive you. Please forgive me.
If you can carry that with you throughout your daily life and apply that in your individual interactions with humanity, you're in good shape. But as it pertains to losing a loved one, I just remember thinking, man, this is what you want film and television to be about. This is what you wish for storytelling to be.
People were coming up to me, like the script lady came up to me and was crying. And I said, okay, why are you crying? I love you. And people were on the lot. I go to lunch and they were, no, we love you, and I'm like, what are they talking about? Because the shows, this show is kind of secretive too, especially when they were that the way to me. I didn't know from one script to the next what was going to happen. So I just was doing what I was doing. And then finally, I sat down next to Noah because he was directing these last episodes. He was monitoring whatever I was doing. Even if he wasn't directing that particular episode, he would come in and see what was happening with me. Was I pulling it off and whatever? So this whole thing, I think, was his baby. The Ark of Louis, we just nicknamed it Noah's Ark. He sat me down. I said, oh, "Am I going to die?" And he said, "Sit here." He ended up telling me, "Yeah, you're going to die, Ernest, but America is going to be crying."
Working with Ernest Harden, I'd watched him since I was a child on the Jeffersons. Just to actually, be on the same set with him and talk with him and eat lunch with him on a regular basis. And we did become friends as the show progressed. And again, that was another thing they didn't tell me at first until right before that scene. They're, oh, by the way, you and Louis, are friends because you're both in the homeless community. You hang out in the same in the same areas, and you guys have known each other for a while. And I was like, well, that's beautiful, and that makes sense.
I got to tell you, my favorite moment in the whole season I get emotional just talking about it, is when you say, Louis just got his wings.
He got his wings.
I cried at that
Me
moment
too.
because it's just so beautiful.
In some ways, we're still figuring out how to make this show.
Uh-huh.
When we started, we wanted to make it such a practitioner-centric show that photographically, we weren't going to even cover the patients to a large extent. We were really going to focus just on our physicians. And then when we started to cut the shows, we realized that unless you have a sense of who the patient is, you're shortchanging the emotional value of the impact on the practitioner. So we had to recalibrate the way we aesthetically photograph the show to bring that character that's on the bed into 3 dimensions so that the practitioner can have an appropriate reaction. And then it just sort of evolved to, well, these characters are all impacting our characters, or these patients are all impacting our characters. So the more 3 dimensional and specific the situation we place them in, the more we can use that as a catalyst for our own micro arcs for our characters.
So when we lost Louis this year, I found myself in that environment with Donnie where he does take it personally, and he in the back of his mind he's always thinking, could I have done more? And I Louis gone, he's lost patients before, but this was like, somebody who was a part of our family. I decided pretty early on in season one, just because of some of the great sort of nuggets I got from the writers. He's not a type of person to announce his emotion. He's not somebody who needs to be heard in that way. And he pulls back a little bit in terms of the emotional expression amongst the team. And I think that's a choice for him, especially coming out of the mass casualty. I had decided that here's a guy who's been in the workplace for a while. He's been committed to doing this job, but he's kind of found a rhythm and he coasts. He's not really doing his all. He's not operating at a 10. He's kind of lost sight of even why he started to do this nursing practice in the first place. And I thought that was a great foundation for once we started to lose people in the mass casualty, seeing Whitaker, seeing Santos, these people in the workplace who are on fire with belief about what they do, on fire for the job and saving lives, kind of gave him an opportunity to be reignited and to recommit to the team in a way where he's now decided to go become a nurse practitioner. And he's starting to open himself up and show up more fully in the workplace. And I just think no matter what job you do, that can easily be the story of many people where you've been doing it for so long and you've lost sight of its importance, and the world is not really helping you see that importance. And then a moment occurs where you go, oh, actually, this is why I'm here. These lives matter. This is why my team needs me, and I'm going to step it up. Where death and chaos show up, um, I think Donnie's taking a different approach than what he did in season one, where he wants to be on the front lines of those moments.
I think the aftermath of the mass casualty really runs through the entirety of season two. I think that the toll that takes on anybody in actual life is a lot and can be subconscious and can color everything in ways that they're not totally aware of. And I think in a lot of ways, season two was meant as an exploration of that.
You see two sides of the coin of how doctors view death or can view death in an ineffective way with Ogilvy, right? I think ultimately in the emergency room, and maybe you should ask the real ER doctors, but from what it seems like to me, is that death can never become a routine, but it also cannot be an obstacle. The normalization of death in the emergency room would be a great tragedy. And to have a doctor be stopped from continuing their work by the loss of a patient would also lead to more tragedy. And so you must actually walk this very narrow line of how do we honor this thing and acknowledge that a life has left the room and the tremendous significance of that, but not let it in too much. I think with Ogilvy, you see two sides of this, right? In the beginning of the day, I think he's so focused on being the best doctor that he can possibly be. He's terrified of consequence. And by that, I mean allowing himself to be softened to the harder experiences in the emergency room. I think he has an intolerance for his own sensitivity at the beginning of the day. And you see him very intentionally be casual about death to the point of where it almost feels like cruelty, right? But I think that's self-protection. But then uh, his moment with Robbie and the Louis eulogy happens where he's watching. And he proceeds to begin having empathy throughout the day to the point where he really allows himself to connect with the patient in the form of Mr. Green, who coincidentally reminds him of his father. And even though it's not actually his fault, because of the importance and high standard that he gives himself and to which he holds himself, he is devastated by his first death that actually affects him, right? He lets it in all the way, and we see the consequence of that.
It's really easy to write him off as cold or a jerk or whatever. That's counterproductive when the issue that we're having is, well, he doesn't have enough empathy. And then we realize that we have to have more empathy for him as well.
Yeah.
That's what I really love about his arc. Tell me a little bit about your experience with the heavier death-oriented storylines. Are those emotionally taxing, and how does your experience as a nurse play into playing those kinds of stories?
Yeah, those storylines are very hard. They're very impactful. I remember for Roxy's storyline, I did kind of go in and interact with her pain pump, but sometimes I would help set her up before because that's sometimes some of my duties is I kind of help make the setup look, accurate, with her cardiac monitor, her blood pressure, her PIC line and whatnot. Before we film those scenes, the vibe is much different because you want to give the actors space to go there. And also, it's kind of like in the hospital. If you go into a room where you know somebody has a serious illness going on, you're not joking around. You're letting people process things. You're giving them space. You're hopefully trying to comfort them and speak to them in, calm, soft voices. And that's kind of how it is on set when we're filming those scenes. So it does actually affect you when you're preparing for a hard role. You have to kind of really get in that headspace so that you can play it authentically. And so it does affect everyone around you because you're also acting with them and you're trying to make it feel as real as possible.
What's going through Cassie's mind is that it could be me, and how tragic and fleeting and beautiful and loving life is. Just the clear bond between those two people, the uncomplicated love, and how that becomes so loud at the end of life. And what does Cassie want her life to look like when she dies? I mean, that was something that was said to me a lot when we were filming, that this person could be me. And she's surrounded by things that Cassie doesn't have, actually. She doesn't have a partner. She has a son. But it was a real existential journey.
Fiona was absolutely awesome to work with. Obviously, she knew it was not a very easy scene for me or for her. So she, like during rehearsals, she was really comforting me, and she kept pulling me aside and, giving me compliments. And that really made me feel like, wow, I'd seen her on the show the season prior. And I'm like, wow, she's really like saying this to me. And it's so amazing, getting compliments from people you look up to and admire. So she was amazing to work with, and she helped me get into the scene so much better because I can sort of see in the scene that she's tearing up. And as a pretty empathetic person myself, even if I just see somebody crying, my eyes sort of start to water. So it really helped me get into the scene and really the depth and how serious that scene was.
Everybody was commenting on him while we were shooting. Like, who is this kid? He's like a little Philip Seymour Hoffman walking around. No, that kid is wildly talented.
He is. He is
And
really
every
going to be
take.
something.
Yeah.
it's just amazing for somebody who hasn't been through anything like that in real life to be that in the moment.
And locked in, yeah.
If you do a lot of those scenes where it's super sad and it's super serious, it's sometimes you just get super tired after 2 takes, or it really is just emotionally draining. So what helped for me was just, okay, I'm here. I'm so lucky and I'm super happy to be here. This is my dream that I've been wanting to do since I was 10 years old. So, and also my little brother Emmett, he was so great. He just brightened everyone's day.
You just got to know that it's fake, and also, like, to show that you're sad, you got to, like, don't make it, like, too big and, like, out there. Just make it, like, slow and, like, subtle. I think we know some people that, like, have watched the show, and I don't think they knew I was in it, but they, and then they started watching it, and they're like, I think I know that kid. There hasn't ever been anyone, like, coming up to me like, can I get a picture? No, no one's done that.
One of the most heartbreaking moments, and tearing up just thinking about it, and just an absolutely masterful piece of acting. I tip my hat to, if I was wearing a hat,
Yeah.
when Cassie sees the blanket that was left behind.
Oh my God.
That is a gut punch. Do you think that she's able to forgive herself for being gone when Roxy dies?
Yes, I also think that it was a really beautiful way to play that moment, because that's often how it is. That reflected reality. There was a lot of doctors that talked to me about exactly that happening. You know, they've taken care of a patient and then they're off shift and all they find out is that they died.
This is something that is addressed, and even though they're using dark comedy to address it, you have to look at the fact that the way Shen and Ellis react to this, it's not the first time. And it's, this is definitely a day shift patient. Like, it's like, oh, here we go again, and it's that energy of like, here we go again. Like, what does it take to push someone to a here we go again, with someone dying in the waiting room? What does it take to get the doctors to that point where they are frustrated, like in a here we go again sense, not like, oh, this is the first time it's happened, what do we do? Because that wasn't the energy that we brought. And I think that says volumes, because that in a way really tells you like how sad the state of it is. And you can see it in the comments, that HBO posted that clip. And I think, people found it humorous, but then there's people commenting like, this is really sad. And, it's a little bit of a polarizing topic, but yeah, I think the overall message, if you look at the characterization and how Shen and Ellis approached it, is like, man, like this is the state we're in, and this does happen, and it probably happens more often than you think.
This was the one moment where we start like overtly hearing the music, like, Noah's like wrapping up his speech, and we hear like the drone and the guitar, like right when like the shot of Louis on the bed, and we start like hearing the song that's like in the scene, and then like Andrew's vocals come in like right before the credits. So it's the one time where they really gave us space for that. But I also think so much of that just comes from the writing, and it was like such a earned moment to wait to do this. And the genesis was really like when we work, we all get together to sound spot like me, the sound designer, the special effects team. We all watched the episode with the post super with Scott Gimmel, with Joe Sachs and Terry and everybody, and we all just like watch it. We talk about sound effects. We're like, do we want music here? And when we got there was like a temporary song placement, and Scott was thinking he was probably just going to license something for that section. And I like begged him for the opportunity to pitch a song.
He had to really campaign. And it wasn't until he sent me his sort of library of rhythm section sketches, chord progressions, and when these things come along, I like to really jump on them and go with my first knee-jerk reaction. And so I turned the song out around pretty quick. The show creators loved it, but it had to go all the way up the chain of HBO, and it was quite a trial to get them to be all in on it. I wanted to do film score work, and then I kind of got diverted by this whole songwriting touring thing in the last 25 years. And but coming back to it, I really find writing a song for scene is uses everything that I've got. It's the most challenging thing I can do. I do instrumental score as well, but I really find the challenge of writing lyrics that make sense with a scene to be the ultimate challenge. So it was really fun, and uh, surprisingly, when this comes along, I get uh, I find it. I wouldn't say it's easy because it kind of took my whole life to be able to do this, but it very fast. Like when you get a prompt like this, you get a scene, you're just playing a small part of the greater whole. Um, to write lyric to try to synthesize all the characters into lyrics. I had to do a quick binge of season one to get a sense of the character threads and what they've been through. But from each verse of the song is trying to take different characters.
There was also something that occurred to me with respect to the flashback that that Dr. Robbie experiences in one of the scenes with the character that I was playing, where he thinks back to having had to take his own mentor, off of life support, or to say goodbye to his own mentor. But through the shields and masks and protection layers of protection that existed in emergency rooms during the darkest days of the COVID pandemic, I interpreted that scene as an opportunity. So, there are hundreds of thousands of people who didn't get the opportunity to say goodbye to their parents in person or to a loved one in person. And I felt like the writers were giving people who missed that opportunity because of the restrictions based on the terrible transmissibility of the virus and the terrible stuff that the virus was doing, that missed the opportunity. I have a number of friends who had to say goodbye to their parents on a tablet. And so my thinking was they are providing an opportunity for audience members who had to do it that way to experience catharsis, to see the perfect experience of saying goodbye to one of your parents take place in front of them, to help process the experience that they had.
The tattoos, death and chaos. We see so much of this is a guy who, rather than being destroyed by the tragedy of that day, he found a way to use it to reignite his belief in the preciousness of life.
Yes,
And
yes.
that's an extraordinary thing. And of course, Donnie's a new father this season.
Yeah.
How does Donnie take in that kind of stuff and not get too hurt by it?
Yeah, it cracks him open for sure. I mean, I feel like, you're right. The tattoos, death and chaos, and miracles and blessings. And he's always leaning on that life force of miracles and blessings being the bigger sort of voice in his head versus this other thing. Yeah, when Baby Jane Doe comes onto the scene, it rocks him. He's feeling it. He's panicked a little bit, and he can't really joke in the same way he does with Charge Nurse Dana. And then Louis going and discovering that photo and that backstory at the end. I think again, it's right on the edge of his exterior, and his sort of like habit is recommitting to the work, right? He just goes and takes the next case. He goes and tries to execute for the team. And it's going to be interesting to see what the writers do, if that's of interest to them, and how that sort of cracks open. But I really feel like they gifted me with such a great dynamic because I am a new father. My wife, my real wife, asked me, she's like, well, how do you think Donnie finds peace or rest in all of this chaos when, sometimes I throw some ideas at her. And I was like, I really think it's that new baby smell. That new life force smell, smelling between those baby toes, smelling that baby hair. I think that resets him.
Something that me, Emmett, who plays Tucker, my little brother, and our set teacher, we made a movie off set. So it was like a little horror movie that Emmett directed and shot, and it was super fun. Just stepping away from all that seriousness to just make like a super funny and a scary horror little short film. So that was definitely the most fun part.
We had a lot of fun. So like we made this movie with CapCut called The Roni that Brittany was in.
The Roni's on the loose. The who? You know who I'm talking about, boy.
It was kind of like my idea because we had like this toy that was like this thing where you would like make the ball go in and out of it, and it was like a tube thing. And then I thought like I kind of looked like an alien if I put it like in my arm. So that's kind of how we thought of it.
Everybody talks about how they had to keep up continuity with hair and everything. With your hair, how is that?
Man, it was hard. I'm not gonna lie. I got a haircut once, sometimes twice a week. And then we would spend a lot of time every morning. It was like makeup so quick, hop over to hair. I'm in there for 40 minutes.
Since the big, beautiful tweet of Trump as Jesus or a doctor or whatever, there has been stuff all over the internet of the Pitt. You went from playing Jesus on The Good Fight to being a nurse practitioner. Are you going to complete that trinity and play president at some point?
That could be good. I'd be definitely open to it. Put me in the White House. No, that's so funny that you caught that. It's when those tweets were going around, I had a bunch of theater directors sending that to me actually. Saying like, have you seen this? And then I have a very close friend who still refers to me as Jesus. Like in his phone, he's like, you Jesus to me forever.
Like, has Duncan approached you about an ad campaign yet or anything like that?
I spoke to them a little bit last year. We'll see what happens. I don't know if they brought it up, but yeah, I think it was like season 1 it was definitely a thing. Season 2 it's now it's just like a staple. Like I think I was at Whole Foods the other day and someone just yelled coffee guy at me. So, it's if I have to be associated with the Dunkin' Cup, these things happen in life, and it's not the worst thing to be associated with. They make great coffee, and America runs on Dunkin', as they say. So.
Is there somebody on set who is like checking the continuity of your coffee?
Oh yes. My boy Cody's always there, and Gooch. They're on top of it. It's how many sips would you say you have had? Did you sip it? Ken, did you have a sip? Did you take a sip? Where's it at? And so the coffee is treated very well. There are not going to be any mistakes with that team, like the Starbucks cup popping up in Game of Thrones. Like that's not going to happen.
If there's one thing that you really hope audiences will take away from Ogilvy's storyline, what would it be?
Yeah, I think it's that sometimes it's the people you sort of hate the most that would really benefit from your empathy, like we were saying. I think it's that slowing down is always beneficial. I think I would hope that they hear that people who maybe, it's so interesting because in medical school, Most people come with great heart and desire to help the world and have to learn the medicine. What happens when you have somebody who comes with the medicine but has to learn the heart? And I think that those doctors have a future too, and just as much of an education. And, I get a lot of messages from people being like, I was treated by an Ogilvy, or I was the Ogilvy, or I've worked with the Ogilvy. And I think that the Pitt tries to say, there's a path forward here. And don't give up if you're that person, and don't judge that person when you interact with them too harshly.
It affected so many people. I'm talking about people going through alcoholism, people who take care of, who have worked in the ER to help alcoholics and all of that. Some people who died from alcoholism. The social media has been just amazing because I've touched so many people. That makes it, to me, and I was talking to Noah about that. I said, can you believe this person was telling me how her father, I reminded so much of her father passed because of that. And he said, Ernest, that makes all the work you did worth it, doesn't it? And I said, it really does. And I guess Louis had to die sort of like how Jesus had to die. I'm not comparing myself to Jesus, but he had to die for our sins, and Louis had to die to maybe get those people who were going through something like that to put that bottle down.
I think given the fact that I'm embodying a nurse practitioner, the biggest thing that's always on my mind is I just want people to feel that the work that they're doing is respected, that the scope of what nurse practitioners do in this country and the way that they are a part of the team is important and it's validated. And I just want people to feel honored. I want people to feel like that's the real thing. And I want healthcare workers to keep doing what they do because we need them. Probably now, dare I say, more than ever. So yeah, that really is always on my mind as I lay my head to rest every night working on the show. It's like I hope my portrayal is felt, and that it has an impact, and maybe people who look like me, think like me, or who don't look at like me and think like me feel encouraged to go into this field and to do this particular role. So
I was very burnt out after working during COVID. I didn't think I was going to go back to working in the ER. Um, it was really tough for me. This show has made me kind of remember what I loved about nursing. It's the patient interactions, it's working with other like-minded people who want to put patients first, who see the humanity in every person. I think one thing great about the show for people who are not in healthcare, for example, a couple of months ago, I had a patient that I was helping taking care of, and they said, well, when I got here, I knew that I would probably have a long wait because of the pit. At least it gave them kind of an expectation and settled their fears a little bit of kind of what it's going to look like when you go to the ER and what happens next.
Cassie was able to witness real, benevolent, pure love with Roxy and her family at the end of life. And I think that that is profound. And when everything's stripped away is the only thing that matters. And I think that access to that, really like having that in your daily life is difficult, but is like touching grass. It can remind you what matters, and you can reorganize your life accordingly. And is one of the reasons why she was willing to, take a risk and go chase this man at an art gallery, which doesn't seem like a big gesture, but ultimately is, right? Leaving yourself vulnerable and open to human connection, which I think in the end is when we die, when we're on our deathbed, is the thing that matters. It's not your next project or how many people watched your podcast or, how many roles I got. in my 40s, or what if I was nominated for something. I think it's ultimately going to come down to people and connection and how we treated people around us.
If there's something that I hope people can take from this episode, it is that death is the same thing as life. There's no one without the other. Like, the price of admission of this existence is to depart from it. And so it is as common as going to the bathroom, eating food, breathing in and out. It is functionally the most natural thing there is. You can't live without dying. So what I believe this episode helps people wrap their heads around is the idea that there is an opportunity, while the people you love are still alive, to say unto them the things that are helpful in their transition and in the experience that you have beyond their death. And so, yeah, I hope people take from this episode the four things that Noah's character points out, and that Jeremy gets to say to his dad, and that also we all have death in common, and that's a good thing.